The emergency transmission crackled through the void of space, its signal weak and distorted after traveling countless light years. Captain Marcus Webb sat in his command chair aboard the Earth defense ship Thunderstrike, watching the holographic display flicker as the alien message played for the third time. The creature on screen was tall and slender, with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes that seemed to hold the weight of entire worlds. Its voice carried a tremor of fear that transcended species barriers. "People of Earth," the alien spoke in broken but understandable English, "I am Ambassador Krell of the Vegan Alliance. Our worlds are dying. The Shadow Fleet consumes everything in its path. We have heard whispers of human courage across the galaxy. Please, we beg for your help." Webb turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Grace Turner, who stood at attention beside his chair. Her expression was grim as she studied the tactical data streaming alongside the message. "Sir, our long-range sensors confirm massive energy signatures in the Vega system," Turner reported. "Whatever's happening out there, it's big." The captain rubbed his beard thoughtfully. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 5 years ago, after developing faster-than-light travel. Most alien species had treated them as newcomers, sometimes with curiosity, often with condescension. Earth was seen as a primitive world that had barely escaped its own self-destruction. "What do we know about this Shadow Fleet?" Webb asked. Chief Science Officer Dr. Alan Reed stepped forward, his tablet displaying scrolling data. "From what our intelligence networks have gathered, they're a nomadic force that appears every few centuries. They strip entire systems of resources, leaving nothing but dead rocks behind." The transmission continued, showing devastated worlds. Cities reduced to ash. Once blue oceans turned black. Forests withered to dust. The alien's desperation was palpable as he gestured to the destruction. "The Alliance fleet numbered in the thousands," Krell continued. "Our most advanced warships, equipped with quantum shields and plasma cannons. They lasted mere hours against the Shadow Fleet. We have lost 12 worlds already. Vega Prime will fall within days." Webb stood and paced to the main viewport, staring out at the stars. Behind him, his bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. These were good people, trained soldiers who had volunteered for humanity's first deep space defense mission. "Sir," Turner said quietly, "the Alliance never helped us during the resource wars. When we asked for medical supplies during the plague years, they said we needed to prove ourselves worthy." The captain nodded. He remembered those dark times, when humanity had struggled to rebuild after nearly destroying itself. The galactic community had watched from afar, some species placing bets on whether humans would survive another century. But that was the past. Now, an entire civilization faced extinction. Analysis, Reed. What are we looking at in terms of enemy capabilities? Dr. Reed consulted his data. Based on the battle recordings, the Shadow Fleet uses technology we don't fully understand. Their ships seem to absorb energy weapons and redirect them. They move faster than anything we've seen. How many ships in their fleet? Conservative estimate: 50,000 vessels, ranging from fighter class to massive dreadnoughts. A whistle came from the communications station. Ensign Jake Miller looked up from his console. "Sir, we're receiving similar distress calls from 17 other systems. The Shadow Fleet isn't just hitting Vega. They're launching a coordinated assault across 3 sectors." Webb returned to his command chair. The weight of decision pressed down on him. Earth's fleet consisted of only 200 ships, built with human engineering and stubborn determination rather than advanced alien technology. They were outnumbered 250 to 1. "Sir," Turner said, "Command is requesting our assessment. Do we engage or maintain our current patrol route?" The captain looked at the alien ambassador on screen once more. Krell's people had shown humanity little respect over the years, but they were asking for help now. More importantly, if the Shadow Fleet consumed these systems, how long before they turned toward Earth? "Mr. Miller, open a channel to all ships in the sector." "Channel open, sir." Webb stood, his voice carrying the authority of command. "This is Captain Webb to all Earth defense vessels. We have a situation developing in the Vega system. An enemy force is conducting systematic genocide against civilian populations. The local defense forces have been overwhelmed." He paused, meeting the eyes of each crew member on his bridge. "Command has authorized full military response. We are humanity's sword and shield among the stars. Today, we show the galaxy what that means. All ships, prepare for jump to hyperspace. Destination: Vega system." As his crew scrambled to execute orders, Webb smiled grimly. The aliens had begged for help, expecting perhaps a token gesture or moral support. They were about to discover that when humanity answered a call for help, they'd brought everything they had. The hyperspace jump took 18 hours, but Captain Webb used every minute to prepare his fleet. 200 Earth defense ships materialized at the edge of the Vega system, their hulls gleaming with the distinctive blue-gray armor that had become humanity's signature across the galaxy. The sight that greeted them was worse than the transmissions had shown. "Dear God," whispered Dr. Reed, staring at the tactical display. Vega Prime, once a thriving world of billions, was now a burning husk. Massive black ships surrounded the planet like vultures, their hulls seeming to absorb light itself. The Shadow Fleet vessels were unlike anything in the galactic databases, organic-looking, with smooth curves that suggested they had been grown rather than built. "Sir, we're being hailed," reported Ensign Miller. "It's the Vegan Alliance flagship." Ambassador Krell appeared on screen, but he looked different now. His pale blue skin had taken on an ashen quality, and his large eyes held a mixture of surprise and desperate hope. "Humans," he said, his voice shaking. "You actually came. We did not expect." "Save it," Webb interrupted. "What's the tactical situation?" A new voice cut through the transmission. "Captain Webb, this is Admiral Voss of the Alliance fleet." The screen split to show a stern-faced alien with silver skin and multiple arms. "We have 47 vessels remaining from our original force of 3,000. The Shadow Fleet has surrounded Vega Prime and is beginning the final harvest." Lieutenant Turner pulled up the sensor data. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. Whatever they're doing down there, it's draining the world's core." Webb studied the formation of enemy ships. They moved with purpose, ignoring the scattered Alliance vessels that were too damaged to pose a threat. The Shadow Fleet seemed confident, almost casual in their approach to planetary destruction. "Admiral Voss, what can you tell us about their weapons and defenses?" "Their hulls absorb our plasma cannons completely," Voss replied. "Quantum torpedoes have minimal effect. They fire some kind of dark energy that tears through our shields like paper. Captain, I must advise retreat. Your small fleet cannot accomplish what 3,000 of our ships could not." Webb looked at his crew. Turner stood ready at her station, her jaw set with determination. Reed was analyzing the enemy fleet with scientific curiosity despite the dire situation. Miller monitored communications with the steady calm of a veteran operator. "How long before they finish with Vega Prime?" Webb asked. 6 hours, maybe less," Voss answered. "Then they will move to the next system. Captain, you should save your ships. Warn the galaxy." The human captain was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and there was something in that expression that made the alien admiral step back. "Admiral, you've been fighting them with energy weapons. Has anyone tried good old-fashioned kinetic force?" Voss looked confused. "Kinetic weapons are primitive. They were abandoned centuries ago in favor of—" "That's where you're wrong," Webb interrupted. "Turner, launch a single probe toward the nearest shadow ship. Minimal energy signature, just enough to get close." The probe, no larger than a briefcase, shot toward the Shadow Fleet at sublight speed. As expected, the enemy vessels ignored it completely. The probe struck the hull of a medium-sized shadow ship and exploded in a brilliant flash. Where it hit, a massive hole appeared in the organic-looking hull. Atmosphere and debris streamed out into space as the ship listed to one side. Impossible, breathed Voss. How did? They're designed to absorb and redirect energy, Webb explained. But a chunk of metal moving at high velocity. That's pure physics. Turner, signal the fleet. All ships, prepare kinetic bombardment. Load the rail guns with depleted uranium rounds. The human fleet moved into formation with military precision. Each ship carried weapons that most galactic civilizations had forgotten about. Magnetic accelerators that could fire solid projectiles at incredible speeds. "Sir," Reed called out, "I'm detecting movement in the Shadow Fleet. They're beginning to react to our presence." Webb nodded. "They figured out we're not running away." "Miller, open a channel to all ships, wide broadcast so the Alliance can hear too." "Channel open, sir." Webb stood, his voice carrying across the fleet. "This is Captain Webb to all Earth defense vessels. Today we face an enemy that has terrorized the galaxy for centuries. They believe they are apex predators, harvesting civilizations like crops. They are about to learn that humanity has a different perspective on the food chain." He paused, watching as hundreds of shadow ships began turning toward the human fleet. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to introduce them to the concept of kinetic warfare. Show them what happens when you corner a species that evolved from persistence hunters. All ships, weapons free. Let's remind the galaxy why humans are called the most dangerous species in known space." The first salvo of kinetic rounds streaked toward the Shadow Fleet at 10% of light speed. The kinetic rounds struck the Shadow Fleet like hammers from the gods. Captain Webb watched the tactical display as his fleet's first salvo connected with devastating effect. The shadow ships, designed to absorb and redirect energy attacks, had no defense against chunks of depleted uranium traveling at 30,000 kilometers per second. "Direct hits on 17 targets," reported Turner, her voice tight with excitement. "Multiple hull breaches, 3 ships showing critical damage." The Shadow Fleet's response was immediate and terrifying. The organic-looking vessels turned toward the human formation with fluid grace, their dark hulls beginning to pulse with malevolent energy. They moved faster than anything the Alliance had ever recorded. "Incoming," shouted Miller. "Dark energy weapons, multiple sources." The first wave of shadow attacks streaked toward the human fleet, beams of pure darkness that seemed to eat light itself. But Webb had prepared for this moment during a hyperspace jump. "Evasive pattern Delta," he commanded. "All ships, scatter formation." The human vessels broke apart like a school of fish avoiding a predator. Where the Alliance ships had fought in rigid formations, trying to maintain shield overlaps and coordinated fire patterns, the Earth Defense Fleet moved with chaotic unpredictability. "They're tracking us," called out Reed from his science station. "The dark energy beams are following our ships." "Then we give them harder targets to hit," Webb replied. "Turner, execute Maneuver 7. The Thunderstrike suddenly reversed direction, using its momentum to slingshot around a piece of debris from a destroyed Alliance vessel. The dark energy beam that had been tracking them shot past, missing by kilometers. Across the battlefield, other human ships performed similar maneuvers. They used asteroid fragments, wrecked Alliance ships, even pieces of the Shadow Fleet's own destroyed vessels as cover and pivot points. It was three-dimensional combat at its most brutal and creative. "Sir, the Alliance fleet is trying to reform with us," reported Miller. Admiral Voss appeared on screen, his multiple arms gesturing frantically. "Captain Webb, you must maintain formation protocols. Coordinate your targeting solutions with our tactical computer." "Negative," Webb replied without taking his eyes off the battle display. "Your tactics got 3,000 ships destroyed. We'll stick to ours." What the aliens were witnessing was humanity's greatest military asset, the ability to adapt and improvise under pressure. While other species had developed elegant weapons and sophisticated defensive systems, humans had learned to fight dirty. The Thunderstrike spun on its axis, presenting its armored belly to an incoming dark energy beam, while simultaneously firing a spread of kinetic rounds from its dorsal rail guns. The shots punched through a shadow ship's hull like bullets through paper. Turner, target their largest vessel. Full spread, maximum velocity. Aye, sir. Firing solution locked. Launching kinetic bombardment. 20 rounds of depleted uranium, each weighing 2 tons, accelerated to 12% of light speed. They struck the Shadow Dreadnought in a line across its center section, and the massive ship literally broke in half. The psychological effect on the Shadow Fleet was immediate. For the first time in centuries, they had encountered an enemy that could hurt them. The organic vessels began to move with less confidence, their formations becoming defensive rather than predatory. "Sir," Reed called out, "I'm reading massive energy fluctuations from the remaining shadow ships. They're doing something we haven't seen before." The shadow vessels began to merge, their organic hulls flowing together like liquid metal. Smaller ships were absorbed into larger ones, creating massive hybrid vessels that dwarfed even the largest human battleships. "They're adapting," Webb muttered. "Turner, signal the fleet. All ships, concentrate fire on the merging vessels before they complete the process." The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. Rail guns, missile pods, even the mining charges that some ships carried for asteroid work. The space around the Shadow Fleet lit up with explosions and kinetic impacts. But some of the mergers were successful. 3 massive hybrid vessels emerged from the chaos, each one the size of a small moon. Their hulls had changed too, developing a metallic sheen that suggested they were learning to defend against kinetic attacks. "Captain," Voss called from the Alliance flagship, "sensors show they're preparing some kind of super weapon. Energy readings are off our scales." Webb looked at his crew. They had bloodied the Shadow Fleet's nose, proven that the seemingly invincible enemy could be hurt. But the battle was far from over, and the enemy was learning from each exchange. "Sir," Turner said quietly, "orders." Webb smiled grimly. "We've shown them that humans don't give up easy. Now let's show them why we're the species that turned warfare into an art form. All ships, prepare for close combat. We're going to teach these things about boarding actions." The Shadow Fleet's superweapons began to charge with ominous energy, but Captain Webb was already planning humanity's next surprise. Sometimes the best defense was a completely insane offense. The 3 massive shadow superships began to glow with accumulated dark energy, preparing to unleash destruction that could vaporize entire fleets. Captain Webb watched the energy readings climb to impossible levels on his tactical display. "Sir, they're charging some kind of planet-killer weapon," Dr. Reed reported, his voice tight with concern. "If that thing fires, it won't just destroy our fleet. It'll crack Vega Prime's core." Webb studied the enemy formation. The 3 merged vessels had positioned themselves in a triangle around the dying planet, their weapons aimed not at the human fleet, but at the world below. They were planning to finish their harvest while simultaneously eliminating the troublesome humans. "Time to full charge?" Webb asked. 4 minutes, sir." Admiral Voss appeared on screen again, his multiple arms trembling. "Captain Webb, we must retreat. Those weapons will destroy everything in this system." "Admiral, how many people are still alive on Vega Prime?" Voss paused, consulting his instruments. "Sensor readings suggest approximately 50 million survivors in underground shelters. But Captain, there is no way to." "There's always a way," Webb interrupted. "Turner, signal all ships. Prepare for emergency docking procedures." His second-in-command looked at him with surprise. "Sir, docking procedures." Webb turned to address his entire crew. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have 4 minutes to save 50 million lives and stop a weapon that could threaten Earth next. The Shadow Fleet thinks they know how this ends. They're about to learn that humans don't follow anyone else's script." He activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is Webb. We're going to do something that's never been attempted in galactic warfare. We're going to board those superships and take them from the inside." The response was immediate chaos. Alliance voices screamed protests while human captains requested clarification. Boarding actions against ships that size were considered impossible. The vessels were kilometers long and filled with unknown technology. "Sir," Turner said quietly, "even if we could get boarding parties inside, we don't have enough people to control ships that massive." Webb smiled. "We don't need to control them, Lieutenant. We just need to break them." "Reed, what's the structural weakness of those merged vessels?" The science officer worked frantically at his console. "The merge points, sir. Where the smaller ships connected, there are stress fractures in the hull matrix. But they're deep inside the vessels, protected by layers of organic armor." "Perfect. Turner, launch all fighters and boarding pods. Target the merge points. We're going spelunking." The human fleet's complement of small craft launched in a coordinated swarm. Unlike the elegant fighters used by most galactic civilizations, human boarding pods were built like flying bunkers, ugly, armored, and equipped with cutting tools designed to crack open asteroids. "Sir, the shadow ships are detecting our approach," Miller reported. "They're launching defensive fighters." What followed was unlike any space battle in recorded history. Shadow fighters, sleek and fast, engaged the human boarding craft in close combat. But the human pilots had been trained in atmospheric flight, used to dealing with gravity, wind resistance, and limited fuel. In the three-dimensional battlefield of space, they moved with reckless creativity. Pilot Jake "Hammer" Rodriguez dove his boarding pod through a cloud of debris, using the wreckage as cover, while his cutting laser carved through a shadow fighter's wing. The enemy craft spun out of control, crashing into its own mothership's hull. "Boarding Pod 7, we're inside the first supership," came a voice over the comm. "This place is like a nightmare, sir. Organic corridors, walls that pulse like they're alive." Webb watched the tactical display as dozens of boarding pods penetrated the shadow vessels' hulls. The humans inside faced unknown dangers, but they had advantages the shadow fleet couldn't anticipate: creativity, adaptability, and the willingness to improvise with whatever they found. "Captain, boarding team Alpha has reached a merge point," reported Sergeant Lisa Kane over the comm. "We'd found what looks like a central nervous system. It's huge, sir. Like a brain the size of a building." "Can you damage it?" "Oh yes, sir. These things aren't expecting demolition charges." The first explosion lit up the tactical display as boarding team Alpha destroyed a critical nerve cluster in Supership 1. The massive vessel shuddered, its energy readings fluctuating wildly. "Sir, the weapon charge is destabilizing," Reed called out. "Whatever they did in there, it's disrupting the entire system." More explosions followed as human boarding teams found and destroyed critical systems throughout the shadow superships. They weren't trying to capture the vessels. They were gutting them from the inside like hunters field dressing their kill. 2 minutes to weapon discharge," Turner announced. "But the energy readings are all over the place now." Webb nodded grimly. "Sometimes you don't need to win clean. Sometimes you just need to make sure the other guy loses worse." The first shadow supership died with a scream that echoed across all radio frequencies. Captain Webb watched in grim satisfaction as the massive vessel tore itself apart from within. Human boarding teams had planted demolition charges at every critical junction they could find, turning the organic ship's own nervous system against it. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. "Supership 2 is losing structural integrity," reported Dr. Reed, his voice filled with amazement. "The boarding teams have severed major nerve clusters. It's like they're performing surgery with explosives." The second massive vessel began to convulse, its organic hull rippling as internal systems failed. The dark energy weapon that had been charging flickered and died, the accumulated power dissipating harmlessly into space. "Sir, boarding team Delta is requesting immediate extraction from Supership 3. Miller called from communications. Sergeant Torres reports they've planted charges at the weapon core, but the ship is starting to collapse." Webb didn't hesitate. "All fighters, priority extraction of boarding teams. Get our people out of there." The third and final supership was fighting its own death throes. Human demolition experts had turned its merged structure into a weakness, targeting the stress points where different shadow vessels had fused together. As the charges detonated in sequence, the massive ship began to split apart along its original merge lines. Admiral Voss appeared on screen, his multiple arms hanging limp with shock. "Impossible," he whispered. "In 15 minutes, your people have accomplished what our entire fleet could not do in hours of combat." "That's because you fought them like civilized beings," Webb replied, watching the tactical display as the remaining Shadow fleet began to retreat. "We fought them like the predators they are." The smaller Shadow ships, seeing their super weapons destroyed and their invincible reputation shattered, began to withdraw from the system. But Webb wasn't finished with them yet. "All ships, pursue and engage. Don't let them regroup." What followed was a running battle across the outer system. The Shadow fleet, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with superior technology, found themselves hunted by an enemy that refused to follow conventional warfare rules. Human ships used gravity wells to slingshot around planets, gaining speed while firing kinetic rounds at pursuing shadow vessels. Captain Maria Santos of the Iron Fist led her squadron through the rings of Vega's 7th planet, using the ice chunks as both cover and ammunition. Her ship's tractor beam grabbed house-sized ice blocks and hurled them at shadow fighters at relativistic speeds. "This is Santos to all ships," she reported over the comm. "The shadow vessels can't handle surprise attacks. They're built for overwhelming force, not guerrilla warfare." Webb nodded, understanding immediately. "All captains, implement pack tactics. Hunt them in groups, hit and run. Make them afraid to separate." The human fleet spread out across the system, pursuing shadow ships like wolves hunting deer. Where the Shadow fleet had expected a single decisive battle, they found themselves engaged in dozens of smaller conflicts, each one designed to exploit their psychological weaknesses. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Shadow fleet," Miller reported. It's not in any language our computers recognize." "Put it through." The communication was alien in every sense, not just the language, but the concepts behind it. When the translation finally came through, it was barely comprehensible. "Unknown. Pack hunters. Request. Cessation of pursuit. Will withdraw from claimed territories." Webb looked at his crew with amazement. "They're trying to negotiate." "Sir," Turner said quietly, "I don't think they've ever encountered a species that hunted them back." The captain considered for a moment. The Shadow fleet was retreating, but they weren't destroyed. They would return eventually, perhaps with different tactics or better defenses. But something had fundamentally changed in the galactic balance of power. "Open a channel, wide broadcast to all ships in the system." When the channel opened, Webb's voice carried the authority of someone who had just rewritten the rules of interstellar warfare. "To the Shadow fleet, you came to this system to harvest a civilization. Instead, you've discovered that humanity has a different relationship with the food chain. We are the species that turned hunting into an art form, warfare into a science, and survival into a way of life." He paused, watching as more shadow ships fled toward the edge of the system. "You're leaving now because you've learned what every predator on Earth eventually discovered, that humans are the most dangerous prey you can choose. If you return to this sector, if you threaten any world under our protection, we will hunt you to extinction. This is not a threat. This is a promise." The last shadow ship disappeared into hyperspace, and the Vega system fell silent except for the cheers coming from the Alliance vessels. Ambassador Krell appeared on screen, his pale blue features showing an emotion Webb had never seen from an alien before: genuine respect. "Captain Webb," Krell said softly, "we asked for help. We expected perhaps moral support, maybe a token force to make us feel less alone as we died." Webb smiled. "Ambassador, when humanity answers a call for help, we don't send tokens. We send everything we have, and we fight like our own survival depends on it." In the distance, Vega Prime still burned, but 50 million lives had been saved. The Shadow fleet was in full retreat, and the galaxy had learned a new lesson about the species from the small blue world called Earth. When aliens begged for help, humanity had arrived with firepower, and the universe would never be the same.